Taylor Jenkins, the next coach of the New York Knicks, hit that rock. Before we get started, make sure to hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit the dark notification bell so you get each and every notification for each and every video I'll put out there. It's your boy Gmo Legion Knicks. Let's get it. So according to the league, the New York Knicks are getting ready to interview Taylor Jenkins, formerly of the Memphis Grizzlies, as well as Mike Brown, formerly of the Sacramento Kings. Now, I'm thinking that a lot of this comes down to a smokescreen for Johnny Bryant, even though reports are out there that the Knicks do not have interest in interviewing Johnny Bryant. Now, there's some interesting theories out there, one held by Gilbert Arenas, where he said that they're basically they're so-called putting in these interviews to try to poach coaches from other teams to then get rejected and just make Rick Brunson the hire and to say, hey, we tried, try to get these guys, just didn't work. Now, it is somewhat of a stretch, but I am a little bit scared because the fact that Tom Thibodeau was fired despite getting to the ECF, 51 wins, seems as if his voice started to get stale in the locker room. Guys didn't want to keep responding. It seemed like they were trying to respond. They played their butts off better than some other teams who stopped playing for the coaches. And so that would kind of give you the idea that possibly this could be a situation where you have a puppet coach and the players basically run the team. And we've seen that time and time again. That doesn't work. we can't have that. So the Rick Brunson idea is very scary. Again, I don't know much about him in terms of coaching chops per se. And again, when you're the most liked guy in the locker room, doesn't necessarily going to mean you'll be the best communicator, going to be the best head coach, because you go from being the most liked guy as the assistant to the guy that now you have to delegate, you have to put out responsibilities, you have to instruct, you have to play a role that's really not likable by a lot of these players who are making wads of money and want to get the ball as many times as possible and get their stats up. So hopefully Rick Brunson's not the answer. Just can't be that. But interesting enough, the Knicks are looking at Taylor Jenkins as well as Mike Brown. I will cover Mike Brown on another video. Just want to talk about Taylor Jenkins because he is an interesting candidate that could benefit the Knicks in various ways. So let's get to it. So let's get started. Taylor Jenkins coming over from essentially from the Popovich coaching tree. He's around 40 years of age, relatively young. This is a guy who was an assistant coach under Greg Popovich with the Spurs, moved over to Atlanta Hawks with Mike Budenholzer for about 6 years, then went over to Milwaukee with Budenholzer, and then replaced JB Bickerstaff as a coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. A guy who's had a win percentage around 54%. The first two seasons in the NBA, kind of struggled with the Grizzlies. They like ninth, I believe, the first two seasons, but then they finished second place in 2021 to 2023 for 2 seasons. Lost in Golden State the first time in that playoff run, or in 2021-22 in the second round. Then they lost to the Lakers the next season, despite still being in second place. In the Western Conference this past season, I believe they were in the 8th or the 9th spot in the Western Conference, but they lost this year in the first round by OKC, and Taylor Jenkins was fired with around 9 games after going to regular season, replaced by his assistant Tuas Lesolo. Sounds Portuguese. But there have been a lot of things that have been happening. Obviously, you saw some signs with Taylor Jenkins. They fired a bunch of his assistant coaches. When they start firing assistant coaches, you're essentially a lame duck. You got to play ball. You better win. And even if you win, they still might replace you like Tibbs. Tibbs didn't win. He got to the ECF, 51 wins. He did better. He achieved what they want. It's not a video about Tibbs. It's a video about Taylor Jenkins. Now, again, they fired his assistant coaches. There was some contention between him and Zach Kleiman allegedly regarding the offense, where they've gone to a heavy pick and roll offense on the Ja Morant. 4 out of 6 seasons that Taylor Jenkins coached the Grizzlies, they were top 10, or at least top 10 in pick and roll frequency, to this past season being last in the regular season, being last in pick and roll frequency. Now there's a change in philosophy where Taylor Jenkins preferred the pick and roll, a very Ja Morant focused offense where you have the ball in his hands, use a big like Triple J. Brandon Clark was healthy. Zach Edey, who they drafted to kind of be this big plotting center who could protect the paint, but also run that pick and roll with a guard to where it's essentially, Solo's offense, which is it's a motion offense, a lot of off-ball movement, a lot of smart, clever cuts, moving the ball around, and that actually drew some. I don't know if the right word is ire, but some complaints came over from guys like John Morant. Now Taylor Jenkins and his assistant coach LaRoche, I'm forgetting the first name. The assistant coach that was under Jenkins, LaRoche, they actually went back to the John Morant offense. And so that may rub Zach Kleiman the wrong way, according to reports. This is a team that they push the pace and whatnot, but the whole Ja Morant thing kind of imploded on them. Ja Morant, last season getting suspended 25 games. They tried to make it work with different players, that putting the ball in Desmond Bane's hands. And Taylor Jenkins is not a guy who's scared to go to his rookies, utilizing Jalen Wells this year. Gigi Jackson, his rookie year, got a lot of good burn exposure. He's another piece that could blossom, even though his defense could use a lot of work. Again, a team that's ranked high in pace, even though necessarily pace is not necessarily an indicator in terms of good offense. But Taylor Jenkins is a guy that's tried to make it work in various ways and it just hasn't. So I think that's hurt him. You could argue that he's also lost their locker room somewhat. I think a lot of that stems from job, and you saw some cracks where you got guys like Desmond Bane fighting against Santi Aldama out in Utah. Like Desmond Bane's kind of somewhat of a hothead, even though and now he's going over to the Magic. They're getting their shooting touch that needed. That's going to be an issue in the Eastern Conference, but that's topic for another video. Just with Taylor Jenkins, I just think that changing voice, the Ja Morant paradigm might be over in terms of him being a number one player on a team, and you've kind of seen it during this regular season for the Grizzlies. Just anecdotally, you saw against the Knicks where when you're able to force Ja Morant to become a jump shooter, and you basically defended the paint. That Grizzly team, we mollywopped the crap out of them. But not even just that. When you look at, again, one of the things that may have led to Taylor Jenkins firing this season after the All-Star break, the Grizzlies, they went 12-16. And 9 of those losses, if I am to be correct, they lost 9 consecutive games by an average of 13 points against teams over 500. That is ridiculous. That is bad. And they went from being when we talk about the defense. Funny enough, their defense mirrors a lot of what Tom Thibodeau was doing in terms of protecting the paint at all costs, and then defending the outside as kind of like a secondary thing. Even though I think Tom Thibodeau wasn't necessarily a secondary thing per se, as some people put it, like it's also on the afterburners. Proper rotations help defense. But with Taylor Jenkins, a little bit different. I think that he depended a lot on his big Santi Aldama, Triple J, Brandon Clark, who got injured out with a knee injury. That was a major blow for them. He depends on some of his bigger forwards to defend out in space, be able to switch on defense, and that kind of hurt him, right? He's a guy who came in as a so-called defensive coach, just didn't work out. And again, the defense went from being ranked 7th pre-All-Star break, but then slipped to the 19th. And you also argue that a lot of that defense was because of defensive ranking was based on defensive ranking. This is a team that, in terms of just guarding the three-point line, they went from being a mid-tier team in the early part of Jenkins' tenure with the Grizzlies to this past season. Three-point defense is one of the worst in the league. Some fans even said that they preach, just don't worry about the three-pointer, just try to go and get the rebound as part of defense. But they went in terms of giving up, I think they're like ranked in 24th in terms of opponents' points scored, as well as like 27th or something like that. Bottom 10 at least in overall three-point defense. And so when you're not able to get guys to respond defensively for you, when that's your bread and butter, that's your call, you probably more than likely lost the locker room because, again, defense is based off hustle. So Taylor Jenkins has gone through it. He is a coach who I think has some solid ideas. It'll be interesting to see if they try to bring over some of the things they were running under Lasol in terms of motion offense and try to mix that in. But it will be interesting to see if he came to the Knicks, how that setup would look like. Now, obviously, you have some players in terms of some similarities in terms of what he had in Memphis. They try to go with these big wings guards. Even back then when they had guys like Zaire Williams, who they should have drafted Troy Murphy. Guys like Zaire Williams, again, utilizing Santi Aldama. They have John Conquer. Not saying these guys getting major minutes, but there is a so-called prototype they try to build around in terms of some of the wings outside of Desmond Bain, who's probably on the shorter side of things. G.G. Jackson, is more, I guess you'd call more of a guard. But there are some similarities between that, and then you have OG and Macau, guys who are better defensively, or on the Knicks are better defensively, or at least have a more standard defensive profile, or you have more standard expectations on defense from those guys, right? You have, obviously, Jalen Brunson will be your lead guard. You have an offense that needs that pick and roll. So him and Cat, who again ranked in the top, who were the number one pick and roll duo in the league that fell off, I'm pretty sure, in the second half and into the playoffs. Taylor Jenkins will have a lot of things to play with in terms of offensive philosophy, offensive looks, what he wants to do to just get some type of base offense. He'll have that. He'll be able to implement that here. And if he's able to mix in some of the off-ball stuff, some of the motion offense things that the Solo's running, things that actually Taylor Jenkins should know, being an assistant coach under Popovich, he should definitely be knowledgeable of these principles, and seeing that the Knicks do need a little bit more off-ball movement, get the offense away from Jalen Brunson at times, just to make the rest of the team a little bit more dangerous. Defensive philosophy is going to be interesting because, again, there are a lot of similarities between him and what Tibbs does. How does he preach three-point defense? Now, I think one of the biggest pluses for Taylor Jenkins is that he will utilize young players off the bench, right? So under LaRoche, it was thought that LaRoche liked to make fast substitutions and bring people in. They'll have guys come off the bench, 3 minutes here, 3 minutes here. And so we're talking about marrying that with Taylor Jenkins, player development focus, utilizing rookies who assume meet a certain threshold in terms of, being able to practice a certain way and show them things on the court. Look at how you utilize Jalen Wells, G.G. Jackson. Again, G.G. Jackson had a little bit more of an offensive profile, but he's not afraid to use the young plays, not afraid to tap his bench as well too. Look at what he did with Tyus Jones, who I'm hoping the Knicks could pick up in some capacity. A few years ago when Ja Morant was out, Tyus Jones came in, had one of the better runs for a point guard. He's easily averaging 7 to 8 assists a night. And so Taylor Jenkins doesn't mind. I mean, I think he's a guard focused kind of guy in terms of putting the ball in the guard's hands. Not to say he's not going to move the ball around. I mean, he did put in Desmond Bain's hands. Desmond Bain's more of a 2. But you will have that so-called benefit, right? You have guys like Tyler Kolek. You got guys like Pacome who come in and be more, I guess, defensive wing. I'm not saying he'll be handling the ball, but Tyler Kolek could come in, handle the ball. Whoever you bring in from the bench. But also just trying to find ways to get that ball movement, get that guard play off the bench, right? We've talked about Josh Hart possibly going to the bench. Does Taylor Jenkins now utilize Josh Hart as the guy who sets the table? Once Brunson's sitting on a bench, he's the guy who sets the table for these guys. For the other guys, sets the table for Cat, sets the table for Mikal Bridges, sets the table for some of the rookies, some of the young players, Pacome, right? So it does remain to be seen. But I do think there are a lot of positives that could come out from Taylor Jenkins. When I was reading on it, I thought at first that he lost locker room with the players. I think it's more so with the GM per se, and I think the Ja Morant issue really threw a monkey wrench because the Grizzlies were a number 2. They were a thorn in the Western Conference side. And I think that if Ja Morant kept his head on straight and say Brandon Clark doesn't get hurt, they probably in the Western Conference Finals. The Grizzlies were a tough team. You probably a little bit more shooting from that squad as well too. But I just thought that if Ja Morant kept his head on straight, they would have been an annoying matchup in the Western Conference. So let's see what happens with Taylor Jenkins. Again, a very interesting name that came up. Again, a young coach, player development guy. he's come from a strong pedigree. We're talking about Popovich. We're talking about Mike Budenholzer, and he's had some success in a tough Western Conference. I think he's just been undone by some things that just hasn't gone his way, and a front office who now just might be dismantling everything and trying to rebuild, mostly because of John Morant. Got to be honest about this. But guys, let me know your thoughts, your comments. How do you guys feel about Taylor Jenkins coming over to the Knicks? Who you think will benefit the most from his arrival? Do you think that he can maximize Karl-Anthony Towns as well as even Jalen Brunson and having that chemistry? Can he get the defense to be even better than Tom Thibodeau? How does he tweak it to become a better 3-point defending team or coach, whatever you want to call it? Especially from what we've seen, what he did in Memphis, as well as what we've seen from Tom Thibodeau. Just how the NBA is going now, 3-point is king, right? So Knicks have to do a way better job of defending the perimeter, be a lot more effective in neutralizing 3-point threats from the outside, because everybody throughout the playoffs, Pistons, Celtics, Pacers, they all saw blood in the water and attacked us from the perimeter. So it's going to be important to see how Taylor Jenkins is able to improve a defense that was much maligned in Memphis from the perimeter. But it is an interesting name. I think the next guy I'm going to get to is Mike Brown. But let's see where things head off with Taylor Jenkins. Your boy Gmo leads your Knicks. I appreciate you. Peace, Lou. God bless. I'll check you guys out on the next one. Peace.